Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start realizing that not everyone is meant to meet you at your depth. You begin to see that energy responds to energy, that the world mirrors back what you believe you deserve. The more you chase what doesn't align, the more distant your peace becomes. But when you start valuing yourself quietly, without explanation or defense, the right energy begins to find its way to you, not by force, but by reflection. Because self-worth isn't noise, it's a frequency, and everything that's meant for you can hear it. True connection requires no persuasion. It's one of those truths that becomes clearer only after you've exhausted yourself trying to prove your worth to the wrong people. We live in a world where validation has become a kind of currency, measured in attention, approval, and constant reassurance. Yet, what is genuine never demands convincing. When two souls truly recognize each other, there is a natural ease, a silent understanding that words can't manufacture. You don't need to keep explaining why you are enough, because the right energy simply feels it. Most of us have, at some point, fallen into the pattern of over-explaining ourselves, trying to make someone see the goodness in us, our intentions, our care. We bend, compromise, and adjust, believing that love can be earned through effort. But the harder we try to make someone stay, the further we drift from our own center. In that struggle, we begin to lose sight of the truth. What is meant for us does not require proof, performance, or persuasion. Real connection is not a negotiation. It is a recognition. When something is true, it resonates quietly. You feel it in how comfortable you are in another person's presence, in how your silence isn't awkward, in how your words aren't filtered to be accepted. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit someone's idea of who you should be. There's no anxiety about saying the wrong thing, no constant questioning of whether you're being too much or not enough. It's a sense of being met exactly where you are, with no need to translate your emotions into something palatable. Persuasion belongs to the realm of ego, the need to be liked, the fear of abandonment, the insecurity that whispers you must keep earning affection to avoid being replaced. It's an exhausting loop, one that traps you in conditional acceptance. But when connection is genuine, it bypasses ego altogether. It's not based on appearance, achievements, or convenience. It's born from something deeper, an unspoken familiarity, a feeling that says, "I know you, even before I fully understand you." Think of how nature connects without effort. The sun doesn't convince the flowers to bloom. Its presence alone is enough. The river doesn't beg the ocean to accept it. It flows toward it naturally. The same law applies to human connection. The right people are drawn to your truth, not to your attempt to be lovable. They recognize your essence without needing to analyze it. That kind of connection is calm, steady, and grounding. It does not rely on constant reassurance, because it exists beyond the temporary fluctuations of emotion. Trying to convince someone to care or stay often comes from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being chosen, fear that we are somehow unworthy of love unless we prove it. But fear-driven love is not love at all. It's attachment disguised as connection. True connection, on the other hand, is rooted in freedom. It allows both people to be fully themselves without the need to control, persuade, or possess. It does not demand change. It invites growth. It does not require words to sustain it. It lives in the quiet knowing between two hearts that simply understand each other. The beauty of real connection is that it honors authenticity. It welcomes imperfection and doesn't flinch at emotional depth. It allows you to be both soft and strong, vulnerable yet grounded. You can express without fearing judgment, and you can listen without feeling the need to fix. When connection is right, it doesn't rush. It doesn't force clarity before it's ready. It unfolds in its own rhythm, as if guided by something greater than logic. In moments of genuine connection, persuasion disappears because there is mutual recognition. Both people feel seen, not through the lens of expectation, but through the truth of who they are. And that's what makes it so rare. So few are willing to meet others with openness instead of control, with curiosity instead of comparison. But once you experience it, you realize how unnatural everything else feels. You stop chasing, stop explaining, stop shrinking. You begin to trust that what's meant for you will never require you to beg for it. True connection does not shout to be heard or fight to be kept. It simply exists quietly, effortlessly, with no conditions attached. And when you find it, you understand why persuasion was never a part of love in the first place. Alignment over approval means choosing truth over acceptance, authenticity over applause, and connection over conformity. It is the quiet decision to live in a way that feels right to your soul, even if it doesn't please everyone around you. So much of our world is built on the pursuit of approval. From the earliest years, we're taught to measure our worth through grades, likes, recognition, and praise. We learn to mold ourselves into shapes that others find comfortable, to adjust our tone, our dreams, our expression, all in the hope of being liked or accepted. But in doing so, we start to drift away from who we really are. The more we chase approval, the further we move from alignment. Alignment is the state of inner harmony where your actions, values, and desires move in the same direction. It's when your outer life reflects your inner truth. Approval, on the other hand, depends on the shifting opinions of others, a fragile and unpredictable currency that never stays stable for long. Living for approval is like trying to stand on a moving floor. No matter how still you try to be, it keeps shifting beneath you. Alignment is solid ground. It might be uncomfortable at first, especially when others don't understand it, but it's the only foundation strong enough to build a meaningful life upon. When you live for approval, you are always editing yourself. You speak less honestly, you hold back your instincts, you present the version of yourself that feels safest, the one that earns smiles and avoids rejection. But when you live in alignment, you stop performing. You begin to act from a place of truth rather than fear. That shift may distance you from some people, but it brings you closer to those who resonate with who you really are. Approval is about belonging to others. Alignment is about belonging to yourself. There's a deep peace that comes from no longer needing everyone to understand you. The right people don't require explanations. They feel your energy and trust it. When you prioritize alignment, you stop forcing connections that don't fit. You stop bending your truth just to maintain peace. You realize that real peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of authenticity. It's standing firmly in what feels true, even when that truth is misunderstood. The pursuit of approval is endless because it's built on lack. You keep needing more attention, more validation, more reassurance that you're doing okay. But alignment ends that chase. It teaches you that peace doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being real. When you are aligned, you stop measuring your worth through comparison. You understand that someone else's opinion of you cannot touch your core, because that core belongs only to you. It is untouched by applause and unharmed by rejection. It takes courage to choose alignment, because it often means walking away from familiar patterns, relationships that depend on your compliance, roles that reward your silence, and situations that thrive on your pretending. Alignment asks you to trust that what falls away is not meant for you, and what remains will always match your truth. You might lose approval in the process, but what you gain is self-respect, and that is something no one else can give you. When you live in alignment, you begin to notice how your energy changes. You stop feeling drained from trying to please everyone. Your body feels lighter, your thoughts clearer. You start recognizing that not every disagreement is rejection, and not every compliment is truth. You begin to sense which spaces feel right for your growth, and which ones only feed your need for validation. You stop needing to prove your worth because you're living from it. There's a quiet strength in not needing to convince anyone of who you are. That strength comes from alignment. It doesn't argue, it doesn't perform, it simply is. Approval tries to win others over. Alignment draws the right ones in. Approval can vanish with one mistake. Alignment stays even when the world turns away. It doesn't ask, will they like me? But instead asks, is this true for me? And that single shift changes everything. The world often celebrates approval, the applause, the likes, the image of success. But alignment goes deeper. It's not loud or visible. It lives in the way you breathe easier when you stop pretending. It lives in the way your heart feels steady when you act according to your values. It lives in the quiet confidence that even if no one understands your path, it's still yours to walk. In that space, you stop chasing acceptance because you realize that real fulfillment only begins when you stop living for others and start living in truth with yourself. Letting go of performance love means freeing yourself from the exhausting need to earn affection through effort, perfection, or constant proving. It's the realization that love, when it is real, doesn't need a stage. It doesn't require you to act, to hide, or to shape yourself into someone else's idea of who you should be. For many people, love begins as performance, a quiet, unconscious dance to gain approval, to avoid rejection, to feel safe in someone's presence. You do things not because they come naturally, but because you believe they will keep you worthy of being loved. You say the right things, hide your flaws, and suppress your truth. But the more you perform, the further you drift from genuine connection, and the lonelier love begins to feel. Performance love is born from fear, the fear of abandonment, of not being enough, of being too much. It's the belief that you must do in order to deserve, so you overgive, overthink, and overcompensate, hoping your efforts will convince someone to stay. Yet no matter how much you do, it never feels like enough, because performance can't create what authenticity does. Real love doesn't come from convincing, it comes from connection. When you perform for love, you're chasing control. You're trying to manage how someone perceives you, to secure a predictable response, to ensure affection remains constant. But love cannot breathe in a space that's controlled. It withers under pressure and thrives only in freedom. To let go of performance love is to allow yourself to be seen without filters, not the curated version you think others will admire, but the raw, imperfect self that exists when the pretending stops. It's about letting your emotions be felt instead of rehearsed. When you stop performing, you stop editing your truth. You express without calculating, you give without expectation, and you allow others to experience the full range of who you are. That kind of honesty may scare some people away, but it also draws in the ones who are meant for you, the ones who value connection over perfection. So many of us were conditioned to believe that love must be earned. We were taught to behave, to please, to meet expectations before affection was given. That conditioning seeps into adulthood, shaping our relationships and our sense of worth. We learn to associate love with achievement. If I give more, do more, please more, then maybe I'll be enough. But that kind of love is conditional. It demands your performance as payment. True love, however, exists without transaction. It accepts without tallying what you've done to deserve it. It sees you, not what you produce. Letting go of performance love also means releasing the need to always be strong, agreeable, or endlessly patient. Real connection allows room for frustration, vulnerability, and imperfection. It doesn't crumble when you show anger or sadness. It doesn't withdraw when you reveal your shadow. When you stop performing, love becomes softer and more real. It becomes a space where both people can exhale, no roles, no masks, just presence. There's a certain peace that arrives when you realize you don't have to prove yourself to be loved. You begin to understand that love cannot be forced into existence by effort alone. It either flows naturally or it doesn't. The more you perform, the more disconnected you become from the essence of who you are. And in that disconnection, even when love seems to exist, it feels hollow, like you're playing a part in someone else's story instead of living your own truth. When you let go of performance, you invite authenticity into every connection. You allow your flaws to be part of your beauty, your silence to be part of your communication, and your vulnerability to be part of your strength. You realize that love doesn't need you to be perfect, it needs you to be present. The people who truly care for you will find comfort in your realness, not in your rehearsed charm. They won't love you because of what you provide or how well you perform. They'll love you because being around you feels like truth. Love, in its truest form, isn't earned or maintained through performance. It's sustained through honesty, trust, and emotional safety. It allows both hearts to show up fully unguarded, unfiltered, unpolished. And when that happens, love stops feeling like a stage and starts feeling like home. Self-worth attracts the right energy because the way you see yourself determines what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you draw into your life. When you know your value, you stop chasing what was never meant for you. You stop accepting crumbs and calling them love. You stop bending yourself into shapes that make others comfortable while leaving your soul cramped and unseen. Everything around you begins to shift the moment you decide that your energy, your time, and your heart are not things to be begged for. They are things to be met with equal respect. Self-worth is not arrogance. It's not built on ego or superiority. It's a quiet knowing that you are enough as you are, without needing to prove it through effort, performance, or external validation. It's the inner stability that comes from understanding that your value doesn't rise or fall based on who approves of you. It's the difference between needing someone to choose you and knowing that you are already complete, whether they do or not. When you live from that space, the energy you radiate becomes different. It becomes calm, confident, and magnetic. People often mistake attraction for connection, but they are not the same. Attraction can come from insecurity, from longing, from the need to fill an empty space within. But connection born from self-worth has depth. It isn't about possession or validation, it's about resonance. When you respect yourself, you naturally attract those who recognize that same frequency of respect. You don't have to convince them of your worth. They already feel it, because it matches something within themselves. Like recognizes like. Without self-worth, relationships often turn into patterns of proving. You overextend yourself, hoping someone will finally notice your effort and give you the love you've been craving. But love born from need rarely lasts. It becomes fragile, dependent, and heavy. True connection can only exist when both people are whole enough to give freely, not desperately. Self-worth is what protects that balance. It teaches you that your value is not determined by how much you are needed, but by how authentically you live. There is a certain energy that comes from a person who has learned to value themselves. It's not loud, it's not defensive, it's grounded. They move through life without grasping. They don't chase, they attract. Their calmness draws people in because it feels safe, real, and unforced. There's a natural grace in someone who knows they deserve to be treated with care, not because they demand it, but because they embody it. Their boundaries aren't walls built from fear. They are lines drawn from self-respect. When you don't see your own worth, you often end up surrounded by people who reflect that lack back to you. They take more than they give. They ignore what you express. They make you question whether you're asking for too much when all you really want is balance. The energy you put out is the energy you attract. If you walk around believing you're not enough, the world will mirror that belief. But when you hold yourself with quiet confidence, when you stop apologizing for existing fully, you begin to attract experiences that match that truth. Self-worth shifts your focus from external approval to internal peace. It allows you to make choices that align with your growth rather than your fears. You stop settling for halfway love or conditional friendship. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, you move where your presence is valued, where your energy feels seen, where your soul feels at ease. This doesn't mean life becomes free of rejection or loss, but your response to them changes. You no longer crumble when someone walks away, because your worth isn't built on their decision to stay. When you start valuing yourself, you begin to attract people who do the same. You notice conversations that feel lighter, connections that flow naturally, and relationships that grow without struggle. You no longer feel the urge to prove your goodness or earn affection. You attract energy that matches your truth, people who respect boundaries, who speak with honesty, who bring peace instead of confusion. The universe has a way of rearranging itself around self-respect. What once drained you begins to fall away, and what's meant for you finds its way back effortlessly.